when conflicts arise with my child, and on my decision to act from the heart. A personal account by me, Pia Dögel. I've never shouted so loud in my life as in conflict situations with our daughter. Knowing very well that children's behavior can be imbalanced and impulsive up to around their 7 year, and that they are not really ready for intellectual arguments, I nevertheless sometimes lose my composure in everyday life. This especially happens when I'm pressed for time or low on energy. Looked at more closely, I lose my composure when I expect certain behavior from my child, but she behaves different to how I want. A recent example. It's bedtime and I ask my daughter to come to the bathroom so we can brush her teeth. But she's in her play and needs to feed her doll just right before she can move on to the next task. She is just not quick, as I would love her to be. The young child is still living completely in the moment. We adults can seldom be engrossed and lively as a young child living in the moment. Planning things, thinking in advance, and having to get things done by a certain time is part of our everyday life. But a vibrant daily life together is full of surprises. It just cannot be planned. Consciously experience what is going on inside. The fact that we adults can act with foresight and planning is one of our greatest abilities. Only in this way can we come to meaningful decisions, for example, determining what is good for the development of a child. Nevertheless, to live a mindful life together, we have to be able to distinguish: am I seeing my own idea in my head, or am I actually experiencing what is really going on now? We need to be able to distinguish projections versus reality. For example, when I'm telling my daughter that we need to brush her teeth now, and she is not coming after some seconds, I start to think she is ignoring or trying to provoke me. But a child this age just lives in the moment and is absorbed in her own doing. In fact, when I look at her, she is tenderly taking care of her baby. Why should she rush? Perhaps she is testing how far she can go, but she is definitely not ignoring me or trying to provoke me on purpose. Imagination and perception don't work at the same time. As long as we are not aware that we are living in our thoughts and in our idea of what should happen and how, we are also not open to what is really happening in the moment. It is not possible to imagine and perceive at the same time. More on the subject imagination and perception don't work at the same time can be found on beginningwell.org. How often does it happen that we are only partly or half aware of something and immediately fit it into our own ideas? For example, once I think my daughter is ignoring me, I then judge the situation that actually happened differently. I judge her behavior based on experience of the past instead of being open and perceiving what is really happening in the now. Nothing happens exactly like it did before, because my child and I are all so different each time. So every moment with each other is new and fresh. And if we manage to accept every moment as it is, without prejudgment, I have no reason whatsoever to get annoyed. This does not mean that all kinds of children's behavior should be tolerated. It means that my attitude and ability to set limits comes from a place of love, respect, and compassion, not from anger, fear, or pain. Saying this now sounds so easy, but in getting closer to this attitude, I needed to practice. I needed to practice resolving conflicts with love. For me personally, I grew up in a family where tenderness and softness or vulnerability were seen as weakness. and weakness was just unacceptable to the adults around me. Authority was more important to them than holding hands or hugging. To admit being vulnerable, especially when I feel attacked in conflicts with my child, is something I need to learn. I ask myself, how can I deal with conflict with an open heart? How can I hold hands through conflict? If I really want to change this habit of protecting feelings, how can I do so? Cracking my shell. The most important step is that I'm more aware of what's going on inside. What are my needs? My feelings? And my thoughts as I'm engaged with my child? Practice to more awareness. Getting more awareness of ourselves is something we need to practice, and we need to practice it over and over again. The following questions guide me to deepen my awareness in both the moment of conflict and later when I have time to reflect on the conflict. I would like to invite you now to take a few minutes to consciously perceive what you experience by the following questions. How were you feeling before you decided to listen to this podcast? How are you feeling now? Do you feel light and mobile, or do you rather feel limited and rigid? Are your shoulders relaxed or tense? Is your tongue released or engaged at the top of your mouth? How are you breathing? How is your contact with the ground? Do you feel sufficiently recognized and appreciated today? Now please listen into your mind. When are you lost in thought? And what are you thinking? When are you judging your child's behavior? Are you able to perceive in the moment without thinking of how the situation should be? If you were able to let go of expectations, what changes within your togetherness do you experience? Can you perceive every moment with each other as new and fresh? While you practice to observe yourself, try not to judge your behavior in right or wrong. The aim is to be more mindful and conscious with each other, which is challenging enough. If you weren't able to reflect on those questions right now, this practice session starts a bit after minute 6 in the recording for you to come back anytime you want. Your feedback would be wonderful. Was this podcast helpful for you, and what were you missing? What works for you, and what would you like to share with us? With your response, we can develop further podcasts to bring more awareness and joy to parenting. Feel free to send me an email at info@beginningwell.org. And I thank you for listening.